The Conservatives are going to go crazy after they lose. They always go. All parties go crazy after they lose. They fall apart. No party loses an election when they've been in power and then really regroups and does better next time. No, they spiral off into the worst version of themselves. That's pretty much what all parties do. They're going to do that, and you sort of think if Rishi Sunak, even for himself, has any hope of a future career, he'd want to get that over with sooner rather than later. I do not see how it aids him, or indeed aids his many MPs who are fearful of losing their own seats, to cling on this long. They will do better if they go sooner. Well, I'm writing about the next election and when it is, and specifically when the Conservatives might want it to be. It appears the latest it can possibly be is January the 28th, 2025, which is 15 months away. That's 25 working days after the 5-year anniversary of the last election. Now, the Conservatives have just had some sort of incredibly dismal by-election results. Obviously, the thinking probably is that they want the next election to be as far away as possible, so that they can recover, they can stop being in the kind of sort of tumbling fast that they are at the moment, that the economy can start to recover, they can start getting some credit for it, and so on. What I'm suggesting, though, is that there's really very little prospect of things getting better. More or less, most Conservatives, so far as we know, have basically given up on the idea that they might win. They're now sort of engaged in this process of damage limitation, trying to limit the number of seats they can lose, limit the Labour landslide, and so on. But it doesn't really. I'm not clear why they think the situation is going to improve. I'm not clear why they think the damage is going to lessen. Really, it might be very much in their interest to have the election sooner rather than later, because 15 months from now, I think they're going to be in an even worse state than they're in at the moment.
Yeah, I can see one reason, Hugo. What do you think, for going the absolute distance to January 2025? And that reason would be utter, complete desperation, because the idea of a January general election with campaigning over Christmas, with politicians throwing mud at each other in between the John Lewis advertisements, and with people knocking on the door when you least want people to knock on the door, it's not going to endear people to the party in large numbers.
Well, no, but I mean, what's going to have happened by then? How many more catastrophes? How many more disasters? They're in this particular position, the Conservatives, where they get grief for the things they get wrong and for their failures, but they're not really going to get any credit for anything they do right. Anything that goes right is like the economy improving, the cost of living crisis easing, interest rates dipping, if we're so lucky for that to happen over the next 15 months. All I think will be regarded as a thing that was kind of happening anyway. Indeed, the more the kind of the state of the country improves, perhaps the more confidence people will have for a change, to vote for Keir Starmer. What the Conservatives, the only thing they can really hope for is that in some way Labour falls apart. But Labour is showing absolutely no signs of falling apart. In fact, Labour seems to be growing more and more confident, more and more kind of governmental, more and more like a government in waiting every day. And 15 months from now, I think the picture is just going to be far worse for them.
And you mentioned the idea of a spring election then, I guess in that case coinciding with the local elections in May, which are going to be forecast to be pretty grim. And I guess that theory goes, look, you go in May, at least it's not going to be as bad as it would be later on. So take a hit, for fear of taking a punch, in the middle of your nose. That's the idea. But it's not in human nature, is it, Hugo?
No, it's not in human nature. But I mean, I think they should be a little bit realistic. Obviously, they would lose an election in May. I think that's almost a given. But I think they might do rather better in May. And if the point is damage limitation, then you do that properly. Look, Rishi Sunak, he's been there in 2 days' time. By Wednesday, he'll have been there for a year, right? By May, he'll have been Prime Minister for literally 10 times longer than Liz Truss was.
Yes.
That's pretty good. That's good points on the CV.
Yeah.
Maybe this is as good as he can do.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a tin of sardines in the larder, which has been there for 10 times longer than Liz Truss was the Prime Minister of this country. And you've got a Prime Minister, if he goes for May, I merely think out loud, if he goes for May with something like a certainty of defeat, it's the end of the party in power. It's the end of him as Prime Minister, and very quickly after that, the end of his leadership of the party, never to return. It's asking quite a lot on a human level.
Yeah, but it's all going to happen. I mean, what sort of Prime Minister does he want to be remembered as? If he's remembered at all, the Conservatives are going to go crazy after they lose. They always go. All parties go crazy after they lose. They fall apart. No party loses an election when they've been in power and then really regroups and does better next time. No, they spiral off into the worst version of themselves. That's pretty much what all parties do. They're going to do that, and you sort of think if Rishi Sunak, even for himself, has any hope of a future career, he'd want to get that over with sooner rather than later. I do not see how it aids him, or indeed aids his many MPs who are fearful of losing their own seats, to cling on this long. They will do better if they go sooner.